when you set up your business, you set it up with a high street bank if possible, because as your business grow, as you bootstrap it, you know, these banks will see what's happening, will see transactions, and they may be able to give you money. Whereas if you go with a digital bank, you're less likely to get that sort of loan. So yeah, and also documenting, anytime you invest money into your business, making sure it's documented, whether it's on a spreadsheet, or on a system, just document it so you know and you can keep track of all the money that you've actually put into the business.
It's Max, back for Black Income Creators podcast, and today I'm with Oje. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, yes, my name is Oje Ohonyon. I'm one of the co-founders of the male grooming brand called Beard Surgeon.
Okay, and just before we go into Beard Surgeon, tell us a little bit about what you did before.
Yes, so I worked as an IT project manager about 7 years before that. I went to university in Leicester, DMU, studied computer science, and then as soon as that was done, I went straight into work and I was working as a project manager. And yeah, that was basically managing IT projects for different companies.
Why De Montfort?
So De Montfort was actually my second choice. But it was a great uni. I actually loved it. My first choice was actually Leicester University. I didn't get in. And then I wanted to be in Leicester anyway, so De Montfort was the next best choice, and I loved it there. I went there with one of my best friends, and we had a great time.
That's interesting because Leicester, I mean, it's known for being quite a high population, Asian population, isn't it, in terms of the area? So what made you want to be in Leicester?
I just wanted to leave London, if I'm being honest with you. I wanted the freedom to be on my own, live by myself. You know, I grew up in a family with I have 3 siblings, so I'm the oldest of 4, and I just wanted to have that freedom and just escape my parents, I think. And I just wanted to experience what uni was like. And in my mind, uni is always, about living by yourself and experiencing new things. So we just wanted to leave London. Yeah. And Leicester was a great location, great place to go to.
It is a good university city. I think it's like Leicester, Sheffield is another one where a lot of people go to, Manchester, obviously. So yeah, that makes sense. So no, that sounds interesting. And I think also if you've grown up in London and been in London, if you choose a London uni, it's very difficult to justify not living at home.
No, you can't justify not living at home. Yeah, it's just if you're going to London, you better stay at home, because there's no way that's going to fly with my parents anyway.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. I just thought it'd be interesting for people to sort of get sort of like a before the business type sort of picture. So tell me a bit more about your business.
Yes. So Beard Surgeon is a male grooming company. It was started by 2 of my best friends, one called Abby and the other called Terry. And they've got massive beards. As you can see me, I haven't got a massive beard. But they started the business, and very early on the journey, they created the concept, they created the idea. They wanted to create a business and a product that allows the beard to feel good, makes it softer, gives it a nice shine, promotes growth. But most importantly, a product that has natural ingredients and also smells nice. So that was the idea, and they developed this. And very early on, they reached out to me. They showed me the product that they had created, and I just loved it. I fell in love with the product straight away, and I just joined the team. And since then, we've been working as a trio. That was 4 years ago now, and we've managed to grow the business to 7 figures. We started off, selling online, and then after about 1.5 years, we started doing pop-ups in person. So these pop-ups would be situated in different shopping centers at the same time, selling our products, allowing people to smell it, and that's what really took us to the next level, and that's what really put us on the map, because our product is scented and people need the opportunity to smell it. And once they smell it, they smell it, they fall in love with it, and that's how we were able to grow our brand.
And you said it was Abby and Terry.
Yeah, Terry, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Is Abby Nigerian?
So Abby is from Cote d'Ivoire, Ivory Coast. And Terry is Nigerian, and I'm Nigerian. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, so it is sort of Black founded brand, because I wasn't sure. Like I thought.
Oh yes, it is. Yeah. So funny story, Abby. I went to secondary school with Abby, but we weren't close. We didn't really have a relationship in secondary school. Terry, I knew from secondary school days. We were always cool. We became close during uni times, because he was in Coventry and I was in Leicester. and that's where he met Abby. So they met each other in uni. And then when we started the business, I kind of just joined them and I kind of rekindled with Abby. And it was kind of nice to know that I was doing a business with someone who I went to secondary school with, but I didn't have a relationship with them back then, but I have a relationship with them now. So it was a lovely 360.
And in terms of that, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because like doing business with friends or family can go either way, can't it?
Yes.
So
Yes.
how do you think as founders, you three are complement each other, but also sort of like are uniquely yourselves, if that makes sense?
Yeah. I think there's a few things, like you said, it can always go in two different ways. I think with us, there's a level of respect that we have for each other, and that transcends in everything we do. And also, I think one thing that's quite important is I experienced working in different businesses as a project manager. And one thing that always stuck with me, as a project manager, you have stakeholders, and you always have to basically do what you can to make sure the stakeholders are happy. And when I joined Beard Surgeon, I had the mentality that these two founders were my stakeholders. So whenever, there's a dispute or whenever there's a discussion, I always have in my mind that anything that we're discussing or any point that someone brings to the table is because they want the best for the business. And when you remember that, it avoids so many different issues because you just remember that everyone's bringing a point or addressing something because they want what's best for the business. And once you remember that and you have a level of trust, understanding, maturity, I think you can do well, even if you're working with friends. And also we have different personalities. I'm more of the quiet one. I'm the one who basically, I will do a lot more thinking than talking sometimes. I'm less emotional than some of the other two. Abby is he's a doer, so if you tell him what to do, he will get it done. Tare is very passionate, and he that passion is always needed in a business, to have someone that's always gonna fight for their cause. And yes, the three of us have different skill sets, and we just go well together.
So I'm assuming sort of Abby's kind of like sort of director operations, you're like resources and stuff, and then marketing, sales, probably Terry, from what you're saying.
Yeah, to some extent, yeah. To some extent, I dip my hands in everything because that's just the nature of my my nature. Abby is, when it comes to the products, making the products, Abby is the best. He's number one at doing that. Even when it comes to selling the products in the retail space, Abby's number one. When it comes to marketing, Terry is the man to go to. And when it comes to finance, logistics, operations, HR, a bit of everything, that's where I fall in. And then also bringing in that experience that I have as a project manager, working for different corporations, bringing that into the business and allowing us to become a bona fide business. That's where I come in.
So how long had they been going before you joined?
So literally they had a month. So they're basically, so they're basically created the product, created the brand name, and we hadn't even launched the business at that point. So I came in very, very, very early, and then we launched the business. So yeah, that's that one story.
And so in terms of, because you guys have bootstrapped, haven't you? So in terms of sort of getting that together, what was that like initial discussion around? Let's do this. Let's work together.
So initially I was working. I think I was working for McDonald's at the time as a project manager, and I had a little bit of capital saved up. So the guys, they showed me the business plan, and I approached them. I said, you know what? I want to be a minority shareholder. So I want to invest some capital. I want to be a minority shareholder. And, I'll just, help you guys run your projects. I'll be a project manager for the business. And they agreed. So I think I had about $7,000 or so saved up at the time. And I invested that into the business. I was a minority shareholder, and we ran with it. I think it was about maybe 3 to 6 months in, I realized that if this business was going to be as successful as I wanted it to be, I would have to give it everything. And in order for me to give it everything, I would have to be an equal partner. So I went back to the guys and said, guys, look, I'm doing a lot of work here. I want to give this what it deserves. The only way it's going to happen is if we're all on the same page. And they said, fine, that's fine. You have to do X, Y, and Z. Bring a bit more capital. And I said, okay, I'll bring the capital. However, I want the capital to be reinvested into the business in these different areas. And they were fine with it. And that was it. And then we went from there.
I see. So I guess the fact that you guys were friends means that you could have that conversation and it didn't
Yeah,
get too like legal. It was like,
yeah, yeah,
listen, let's all.
yeah. But also, I was adding value. So I came in before the business started, and I worked as if it was my idea initially. And when you're looking for business partners, you need people that are gonna put the business on their back and really champion it and push it as if they were the person that came up with the idea in the first place. And once you have that, once you see that in the person, then it's very easy for you to, bring them on board and make sure that they're part of the team.
And I think that's a critical point, because I think especially for startups and small businesses, recruiting, and get, even bringing in something like a CEO or COO or whatever, it's really difficult to do because they don't have
Yeah.
the same level of passion, or investment into the business
Yeah.
as a founder may.
Yeah. Very, very difficult. Yeah. And
Yeah.
we had, when it comes to recruitment, we try to bring in our families. So we were working on, there was a point where my mom was manufacturing products. Terry's sister was helping. My sister was head of manufacturing. Terry's sister was head of operations for a bit. My little brother was working on sales, and he was a very good salesman for us. So, my fiance, she was working as well, helping us with our finances. So we had a massive team of family and friends working with us. And that was great for that time.
Yeah. And at what point did you sort of say, to get 7 figures, we're going to have to let the bank of, family go and sort of have people who can commit sort of fully to the business?
Yeah. So it's interesting because we 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 came into money very quickly, and we didn't really know how to, the best way to utilize it. So when I say we came into money, we started doing these pop-ups, and we set up our Westfield kiosks, and that the first month was amazing. I think we made about 60K the first month, and we doubled down and we continued. And then we realized that at the end of the year, we had made a lot of money, but we had also spent a lot of money as well. So we were trying to grow really quickly. So, recruiting this person to do this, recruiting that person to that. And I think sometimes when you try to scale too quickly, it can cause issues. So we had to then, bring it back a bit, and hire cheaper resources. So to get to the 7 figures, yes, we had to utilize, our immediate network, so friends and family, our own pockets, and that's how we were able to scale the business. And also, there's different financing, tools that we use to help us on that journey, which I can go into. But yeah, that was the story. We kind of just scaled really quickly and tried to grow really quickly, and then realized that, we need to basically dial it back a bit.
So when you said that initially you guys were doing online, how were you only online? When did you start the pop-ups in the journey?
So about a year and a half into the business.
Is that because of COVID? Is that because like lockdown was still?
No, so I think it was just, I think my business partner Terry, I think he did a pop up at one of his church at the time, and we also did a pop up with another friend at a shopping center who had a catering business, and we realized that we made in a couple of hours more money than our website was making at the time, and then basically it was a light bulb moment. We realized that this might be it. This makes sense, and we just continued to do it, and it was never the original plan. When we first started the business, we were an e-commerce business. We wanted to stay e-commerce. Retail wasn't even something that was in our minds. It kind of just formed as the business grew and as we grew as business owners. And yeah, we just took it by storm and we just ran with it.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because you say that the thing that draws people in is the smell, the scent.
Yep.
So I guess you're right in terms of like, yes, e-commerce would be lovely, but that's repeat customers definitely would, be attracted to that. But new customers would need the smell would be and you said scent. So what is the best selling scent?
Yeah, so our best seller is True Essence. So True Essence it's got sort of a cinnamon smell. It's got a bit of amber. Similar, it's almost like a floral scent, but it's not too strong. And then we have Intense Attraction, which is a bit more oody. It's got, coconut elements, eucalyptus, very popular. And then Sweet Dream, very sweet, very popular, similar to True Essence. It has similar notes. But yeah, those are the top three most popular scents, and we have 4 in total.
Yeah. So I know you say it's a male grooming product, but do you find that it's women that are buying it for their men, or is it men that, typically buying for themselves? Who's your main customer?
So our main customer is, a man aged between 25 to 35. However, we do find many instances where women come and buy it for their partners, their brothers, their friends. And also, because our product is actually a unisex product, I know we're called beard surgeon, but our products can also be used by women on their hair or on their skin. So there are many instances where women come and purchase the products for themselves as well. But we predominantly target men.
Yeah, that makes sense. And do you find that, okay, so a woman's coming in and she's like, okay, yeah, I'm buying it for my partner. So she ends up buying the scent that she likes because she wants to.
Yes.
Yeah. So
And
she's
also,
like the cinnamon.
yes, that one, I like that one, stresses. And also, men like what women like. So if a man comes in and he doesn't like a smell, but his friend or his partner says she likes it, he's gonna like it. He's not gonna argue.
No-brainer.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer.
And I see that you're wearing one of your hoodies.
Yes.
It's like smell good, look good, feel good.
That's the motto. Yes, that's it.
Who came up with that? Is that Terry, marketing guy?
I think it may have been, or it may have been someone else in the marketing team, or it might have been something we all did together. I can't actually remember who came up with it. I think someone might have said smell good, and then someone else might have said, yeah, look good, and then someone might have said, okay, I think it should be in this order, so like a collaborative thing.
And to tell me a little bit about the growing pains. So, obviously the three of you were like e-commerce, whatever. And then manufacturing, you'd need a base. But apart from that, I guess you can still be quite remote. At what point did you think we need an office? We need to be physically somewhere.
So when we had the retail space, our first location in Stratford, we had Stratford for about 6 months before we opened the second location in Watford. And then we opened White City. So at that point, we needed a space because what happened was we were creating products in the kitchen in the flat in Croydon, and neighbors started to complain because we had a neighbor who was pregnant at the time, and because our products were scented, the smell. She wasn't living in the same building; she was living in another building, but she still complained. However, nobody in the building that we were living in complained. But we just said, you know what, this is the opportunity. Let's just take it and move, because at that point we were creating a lot of stock because we were selling really well and the shop was set up. So we moved to a space in in Leighton. So we had a storage facility to hold stock that we'd order, and then we would have a manufacturing facility to manufacture the stock that we need to create. So we had those 2 locations, and we had that for about a year and just over a year, maybe even 2 years actually, before we decided that we didn't need it anymore, and we outsourced to a third party. So yeah.
So which bit is outsourced? The manufacturing or the storage?
So the storage is we have a facility where we store our stock, and then the manufacturing is now outsourced. As of last year, we've managed to find a third party because we wanted to focus on other parts of the business. And manufacturing, you have to manage the staff, you have to manage the space. It's a lot of headaches. So we decided, you know what, let's focus on selling, or focus on building the business, and let's just outsource this for now. And maybe in the future we can bring it back in house. Yeah.
And how have you found that? Because I think that's where people struggle with products that have to be made. It's finding the right manufacturing partner. How have you found that?
So Abby was managing this. So Abby looked at different companies. We visited them. We showed them the formula, and a lot of the time, a lot of these companies, they can actually do a really good job because they have experience building different products and different formulations. They have, and also they will package it in the right way. And one thing that's also good is that for businesses who benefit from getting VAT returns, they will charge you VAT. Whereas if you're manufacturing it yourself, you don't get that benefit. So and then also they can create it at a large scale so that it will last a long period of time. And then in some instances you can set up payment plans with a third party. So there's different benefits. Of course, sometimes it is a bit more expensive, but then that comes with added benefits. So yeah, we had a spreadsheet of different third party providers. We had their pros and cons. We assessed it and we decided to go with one that was in the UK because we wanted to have easy access to it. Yeah.
Yeah, because a lot of people are going abroad, aren't they? So I know a lot of manufacturers, India, China, Turkey.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not against it. I think it may be the next thing for us, but I think in the initial stages, we just wanted to have somewhere close by. Yeah.
I think in terms of quality assurance as well, it's just that thing of like being able to go drive up to wherever and have that conversation face to face, and you know, and also they understand your customer a little bit better as well because they're sort of, you know, in the UK.
Exactly.
So in terms of that, so a majority of your customers in the UK?
Yes, I would say about 96% of our customers are based in the UK. Yeah.
And then the other 4%?
All over the world. So that could be America, that could be other parts of Europe. Yeah.
And are you thinking about sort of like Africa and America as kind of next places to?
Yeah, the next step. So I think for us, it's a case of, you know, getting that investment that we need that will allow us to penetrate other markets. We've done really well in the UK as a bootstrap small business. But now in order to tackle those, you know, other locations or demographics in America or the UAE or even Africa, I think we'll need a machine behind us with experience that can help us. Yeah.
And in terms of somebody who's thinking about bootstrapping, you know, like now, what kind of lessons do you think you guys have taken from it? Sort of like, what were sort of things where you're like, oh, we wouldn't do that again?
I think sometimes when you have capital to invest in your business, sometimes you need to ensure that you're investing it in things that are going to give you a direct return, especially if you don't have like an unlimited tap of money flowing into the business. Also, like making sure that you have things to leverage. So ensuring that your credit is great and everyone on the you know the board of the business has great credit, because then you can leverage that. One thing, you know, another thing that you need to do is making sure that when you set up your business, you set it up with a high street bank if possible, because as your business grow, as you bootstrap it, you know, these banks will see what's happening with each transactions and they may be able to give you money. Whereas if you go with a digital bank, you're less likely to get that sort of loan. So yeah, and also documenting anytime you invest money into your business, making sure it's documented, whether it's on a spreadsheet, or on a system, just document it so you know and you can keep track of all the money that you've actually put into the business.
Yeah, so that's interesting, isn't it? Because I think a lot of people are thinking, yeah, I'll set up with like my Monzo or my Tide or whatever, but actually they're not thinking about growth. They're just thinking about startup, and there's you know, there's some attractive offers around the startup space, but that's not going to help you grow when you need to leverage.
Exactly.
Okay.
So that's what happened with us. And only recently I've transitioned to a high street bank, and now I've got to build that trust with the bank, get all our transactions flowing through that bank. Whereas if I started with that in the beginning, I probably would have been able to get finance from them back then.
Yeah, you say that. I mean, I've always been with Lloyd's, and I think it's kind of like it can go either way. So thinking you've always been with them, you think, yeah, they know you, so they'll be whatever. But high street banks are kind of like you say, it's like it's all done by spreadsheet now. So if you hit a certain thing, they're like,
Exactly.
When you're asking and you haven't quite hit that level yet, it'll still be a no a lot of times.
I don't blame people as well for starting with, you know, these digital banks, because sometimes opening a bank account with a high street bank is a headache in itself. They don't make it easy for you. So I think
the easiest one I've opened, because I've opened quite a few in my time, has been HSBC.
Okay.
Yeah, but the others I've kind of like, so Barclays takes forever and a day.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So each of them like have got their issues, but yeah, HSBC was like the easiest, but they limited what I could do for the first year. So, but it was the quickest and easiest to set up. So it really does depend. But yeah, I mean, it's probably all changed now. This was kind of like 15 years ago, but you're kind of like, I don't need this stress in my life. I just want a bank account. But you are right. People need to be thinking about growth at the beginning, not just thinking about growth when they're kind of like at 7 figures and stuff like that. So in terms of like when you guys hit the 7 figures, what did you do? How did you celebrate?
This is the thing. We didn't really celebrate because it's the way we hit the 7 figures, all right? So if, for example, we hit 7 figures online, that was the way we did it online, then it's a lot less stressful. But so just for clarity, we had 3 or 4 locations running at the same time, physical location, kiosks open, and each of us directors were working on these kiosks full time, and we were contributing to the majority of the sales. So it takes a lot out of us to be able to sell these products. So I think we were just in the motion of things, and we were just running with it. And yeah, I think in total, the amount of times we would actually come together to celebrate, I think in the 4 years, I think it's happened maybe 2 or 3 times. Every other time we come together is just to work. So we barely had any opportunity to really celebrate. And that's one of the downsides. Sometimes you don't celebrate the wins. So yeah, we didn't really celebrate.
Are you guys competitive? Like, okay,
yes.
Terry's doing this, so Abby's doing that, and you're doing this.
Sometimes, to be honest, like I said earlier, I'm the quiet one. So in the beginning, when all 3 of us would be in one location working together, it can get very, very, very competitive. And those 2, Terry and Abby, those 2 are the ones that argue on the shop floor. They're the ones that, no, that was my customer. No, it gets very competitive. And I don't know why we were competing, but I always take 3rd place. I just let them run with it. I'll be 3rd place. I don't mind. And also, I don't have the biggest beard. They have bigger beards than me. So I don't mind being 3rd place to those 2. Some days I'll be 1st place. Some days I'm 2nd. But yeah, it got really competitive. But it was really fun. We really enjoyed it because you're selling a product that you create in your kitchen, and you're seeing people's reaction to it, and you're meeting different type of people, and you're networking. And I always say to people, I wish I started doing this, maybe 7 or 8 years before we started. I wish I was doing this in uni because it develops a different skill set. The ability to communicate, the ability to sell yourself, the ability to network with people from different backgrounds. I wish I had that experience a lot sooner, but here we are.
And tell me, from a retail perspective, tell me what the difference is between like a kiosk and a shop in terms of overheads, because I think some people don't really understand that.
Yeah. So a kiosk, I think if you're a business that people don't really know about you, and you need to present yourself or pitch your business to people, then a kiosk makes more sense because you're in the middle and there's traffic flowing in both directions. So you have to basically stop a person and tell them about your business. Whereas a shop, most times people go to the shop because they know exactly what they're going to shop for because they know about the business already. In terms of overheads, it's a smaller remit, the kiosk, so it'll be cheaper than a store. Also, in most stores, you may have to pay business rates. For kiosks, you don't have to pay business rate at the moment anyway. So it's cheaper, and you get that footfall that you can basically stop. And also, people see your brand. I think your brand is a bit more visible because it's in the middle. Yeah.
And you said that you started with pop-ups. So initially it was like, you said like Terry's church at the time or whatever. Yeah. So you started with pop-ups.
So we did an event in a church. We did an event in another, I think it was a birthday party or a business celebration. We had a little pop-up there. And then we met a company. There was a couple of companies that helped us on our way. So one company was Fashion Meets Music. Now, Fashion Meets Music is a business that had at the time a store in Croydon and one in Westfield, and they sell different things like fashion, mainly artwork, from small businesses. And we managed to have a little stand in their shop in Westfield and in Croydon. So what we would do, it was actually crazy. So what we would do, we'd have a stand in the shop at the back of the shop, and what we would have to do is we'd have to go out the shop, walk all the way out, find customers walking up and down, and then basically bring them in all the way to the back, and then pitch the business to them, pitch our idea, let them sell our products. And when I think about it now, when I think back to that, we had a different level of hunger, because there were times where, I would go all the way to the other side of the shop center just to get a customer. or Terry will do that, Abby will do that. We were really, really hungry. And yeah, that's how we started. And then we partnered with another company called I Do Handmade. And what I Do Handmade do is they have different small business. They will have a kiosk in the middle and they'll split up. So they'll have about 10 different small businesses at their kiosk. And we would have a small section, a small table, and we would just basically sell to people and shop center. So I would have, let's say I'm in Croydon for one day, Terry may be in Stratford, Abby might be in Lewisham, so we had a little stand in the Lewisham shop center, so we will be doing it back to back. Yeah.
And had you done sales before that? Because you obviously 7 years ago you said you were doing project management for McDonald's. So had you done sales prior to that?
No, we didn't really have any sales experience. We just were quite raw and just hustling, and we've always had that. Well, I've always had that hustler spirit in me. Always tried to start different businesses and do different things, but we didn't really come from a sales background. We just saw the blueprint and then systemized it and started teaching ourselves and then teaching others that we were working with how to do it. Yeah, but it's because it's such a great product. Sometimes it just sells itself. Yeah.
And in terms of, you said that you kind of like come from that kind of hustler background anyway, you've done that, prior. So what had you guys done before Beard Surgeon, as, individually or together or whatever?
Yeah, so myself, I had a rental company, so I was renting cars to Uber drivers specifically. So
right.
yeah. So I had like Toyotas, Kias. So I was doing that before Beard Surgeon. I've also I was very heavily involved in the crypto space as well, tech space. So I was part of a crypto VC, and we were managing funds and investing in different projects at early stages. I've also tried to start, a dining club in the past, which was basically focused on Afro-Caribbean restaurants. So it would be like a card, and customers would have discounts at different Afro-Caribbean companies. Tare worked in customer service. So he done, he worked at the airport, worked in customer service. Abby also worked in customer service as well, worked for TikTok, doing, customer service and other roles. So we were just doing different things. Tara and Abby were doing jobs, but they didn't have like a specific focused career that they wanted to pursue. Whereas I was, I had my project management career that I was focusing on, and I was always starting businesses together with my other friends. So I started businesses with probably like 2 or 3 of my friends in the past. Yeah.
And what would you say would be the financial sacrifices that you guys had to make at the beginning?
Yeah. So Tari and Abby invested their own physical cash. I invested cash, but the biggest sacrifice for me, I guess, was 2 years ago when my last role ended. I decided to go full time in the business, working on the shop floor. I would say that was one of the biggest sacrifices for me, because I was no longer earning the same amount of money that I was earning whilst I was working. So that was a big sacrifice for me. And also when it comes to allowing the business to utilize some of my resources. So for example, I mentioned I had a rental company. So allowing the business to use my cars. And sometimes I may charge the business, sometimes I may not. But even if I do charge the business, the payment terms that I'm giving the business are much more favorable to the business. So those sort of sacrifices, or allowing the business to manufacture products in my home or in my kitchen. So those are some of the sacrifices that I've had to make, financial sacrifices. Yeah.
And so how did you fund that? So when you decided to go full time into the business, was it already at a point where you could pay yourself, or did you have to still kind of take quite a bit of a cut?
So we had to take a bit of a cut. However, it was like we were about to open our first location, and it was a gamble. But the fact that all 3 of us were taking that gamble basically made me feel comfortable and made us all feel comfortable. I think we saw how the pop-ups were doing, the small pop-ups were doing, and we realized that if we have our own location, a kiosk, we would definitely do well. And we did do well. So we basically paid ourselves a commission, a small base rate, but also a commission. And it worked really well for us at the time. Yeah.
Okay. And I guess in terms of people come to the kiosk, How many of those, what percentage would you say go from being like kiosk customers to then being like online customers?
So this is one of the biggest issues we've had, because we can't actually get that information very easily. And the reason why we can't get that information easily is because we use two different systems. So online, we use Shopify, and then in retail, we use Square. Now, if I could go back in time, I would have started off using Shopify and retail, Shopify retail. But Square was the platform we decided to use. So it was very hard for us to see that data. And what we're working on at the moment is some sort of tool that will allow us to see that data, or we may just go back to Shopify and use Shopify as our POS in retail. However, Square just gives you more functionality. So we're used to it. So it's a dilemma that we currently have. So it's really hard. But in terms of, I can give you a percentage of how many of our customers are retail in comparison to how many online in terms of how much sales we generate. So I would say in the first year, retail was about 90% retail, 10% e-commerce. Last year, we managed to bring that number up to about 85% retail, 15% e-commerce. And now I would say it's probably about 80% retail. So what we're working on at the moment is to reduce that reliance on retail and looking at e-commerce, different funnels in e-commerce. So for example, TikTok, the last couple of years, we've basically focused just on Instagram. Now we're looking at other platforms like TikTok to generate sales, Google, and that's how we're going to relieve all the reliance on retail. We're looking at barbers as well, having a long list of barbers that we have on our books selling our products for us. So yeah, that's what we're working on.
Okay, and you talked about marketing there. So why did you guys sort of like go with Instagram? What was the draw?
So I think at the time, that's what a lot of the e-commerce businesses were using to generate sales. So they were investing heavily on Instagram ads. So Instagram and Facebook, that was the only thing we knew. And then I think last year, we saw the rise of TikTok when it comes to businesses. And now we want to invest more on that. But I think it's just what we saw other businesses doing. And also us as individuals and men, we were shopping based on what we saw on Instagram, or buying things based on the different ads we saw running on Instagram. So maybe in our minds, we just thought that this is the way to go. But it's quite expensive to acquire customers on that platform. That's why we're looking at other platforms now.
Yeah, and I just want to touch back on the sort of pop-up kiosk thing. Is there a waiting list typically? So do people have to kind of like plan for those things? You can't be like, I'm gonna have a kiosk in Westfields tomorrow, sort of thing. Or...
No, so that how that happened. You're right. There is a waiting list. So what happened was we were doing little pop-ups. So there was a day, I think Terry was in Stratford in the Fashion Mix music store, and he saw a gentleman walking past one day. This was a bald guy, and he barely had any beard. He just had a mustache and a goatee. But this is the thing, when I tell you we were relentless and hungry, we stop anyone. Doesn't matter if you don't have a beard, you got hair. Products can be used on your hair. So, or even on your skin. So Terry saw him walking around. I think Terry saw some cameramen with him. So Terry was intrigued and thought, who is this guy? So he approached him, told him the business, and they had a conversation, and Terry was talking about the numbers that we were doing. And he basically said he could get us into Westwood. And at the time, his partner was working at Westwood, and she was part of the team, marketing team. So we put together our pitch deck. We reached out to him, and he basically brokered the deal to get us our kiosk in Westwood. And that was probably about 2 months after that initial encounter with Terry. And that's how we got our foot in the door. And once you get your foot into the door, once you're in Westwood, it's very easy for you to then, get another location on the other Westwood, and then also in other shopping centers, because you already have that sort of buying
credibility.
That credibility from one of the biggest shopping centers in Europe.
So, I mean, it's an interesting lesson, isn't it? It's around sort of like, yes, you guys were out there like hungry and hustling, but you don't know who's the customer that could actually end up being your biggest supporter.
Yeah, 100%.
So it's a networking as well, which you said earlier. It's not just selling, because I think that sometimes the issue, isn't it? You're selling in one direction and you don't actually know what other people have to offer you back. So.
Yeah. And I also tell my staff, if you're speaking to someone, you don't know their name, you don't know their age, you don't know what they do, then you haven't sold to them in the right way, because you haven't built that rapport. And you have to be able to build rapport with people before you sell to them. They have to buy into you a lot of the time, rather than just, trying to get a quick sell, a quick buck off them. So yeah, it's very important. And like you said, you don't know who can help you. You don't know what that person could do for you or what you could do for that person. So it's very key networking as part of the job.
And you've talked about sort of like equity and sort of like structuring the business. And we've talked a little bit about making sure that the bank is, you know what I mean? Like you go high street, you think about those things early doors, manufacturing and that. How would you advise somebody who was trying to wanted to set something up in terms of equity and sort of giving away equity and all that kind of stuff?
So I would say it's a tricky one. Giving away as little equity as possible, just so that, because you don't know where your business is going to go in the next few years, because you might need some of that equity for another investor. So if you're going to give away equity, making sure that, you're not just giving away equity, because you have to be very sure on what you want. If it's just money that you want, fine. But if you want someone that's going to give you money, but also come in and give you that the resource that you need to take to the next level, then it's very important that you give them the right amount of equity, and it depends what stage that they come in. Because if they come in before you start generating sales, then that's a different conversation. And also people need to remember, when it comes to equity and money, when your business is doing really well, you'll be able to get money. You'll be able to get loans, you'll be able to get financing. So that won't be an issue for you. But then it's the experience and the resources that come with it. So if someone's going to buy into your business, you need to make sure they come with those resources. I know there's been instances in the past where, I know friends who are giving away too much equity, and it's just led to issues. So always giving as minimum as possible. Yeah.
What would you say has been the hardest lesson you've learned through this journey so far?
The hardest lesson I've learned, I guess, is just constantly having to tell myself that, what I previously achieved or what I was previously doing for the business is no longer adequate. Because I feel like sometimes I can be proud of what I've achieved for the business and what I've done for the business, but sometimes it no longer matters because the business is in a different stage. So basically, the lesson here is making sure that I get myself into the right mindset to be able to do more for the business. And also remembering that the business is only going to go as far as we as founders want it to go. And there's so many lessons. And I think another big lesson is just making sure that, I think this is actually the biggest lesson, not trying to grow too quickly. I don't know if it's a thing to do with my gender or what, but sometimes us three founders, once we start seeing money coming in, we're like, how do we multiply this now? We need to multiply this. But why weren't we thinking about multiplying the money that we just put to the side that we were saving for a rainy day? So I think that's the biggest lesson. Not trying to grow too quickly and taking your time with things, because it's a marathon. It's not a race at the end of the day. So I think that's the biggest lesson: not trying to grow too quickly, because you might have some amazing months, but it doesn't mean every month is going to be like that.
And I think that's the thing that people forget as well with retail, that it's seasonal.
Retail, since we started retail in 2022, we started 2022, or was it 2023? End of 2022, start of 2023. It's been a decline. Like, I've seen businesses go. I've seen businesses come and go. It is so hard. I don't think the shopping centers are as busy as they were in 2023 right now. It's really hard. So yeah, retail was just I feel like retail is dying at the moment. So yeah, like I said, it's really difficult and something you have to remember when it comes to retail.
Yeah, and I think you're right. As in, I think if you'd started in retail, you may not have sort of seen the same journey. The fact that you'd started online, you kind of built a brand and you learned sort of kind of a few things first, help when you're trying to go into retail, because it's kind of like, okay, this is happening. You know, we've got a base from which to sort of like grow from. I think people who just started in retail, you're right. I've seen shops come and go, and you're kind of like, wasn't that a shop something else like 6 weeks ago? Yeah, but I think what I like is the kiosk idea. I think that works really well. Like you say, you get the footfall, you get the brand visibility, which you don't necessarily get in the shop. Like, you know, we had someone here who sold things in supermarkets. So you'd see things, but you'd have to really push for your brand to be seen amongst, you know, a whole other brand. The one thing about kiosk is people are seeing what you choose to show them.
Yes.
As opposed to just like, yeah, you could be lost if you were in a Boots or a Superdrug or something like that. Like people would have to go and actively look for it, I guess, would be a bit different. Do you think you'd go down that route?
100%. So when I speak about, you know, removing the reliance on retail and the kiosks, B2B is another avenue that we're exploring. So getting our stuff in, you know, shopping center, supermarkets, hotels, spas, barbershops. That's something that we're actively pursuing and something I'm working on.
And in terms of the male grooming market, because I know it's a fast growing market, can you just give me some other sort of like statistics around that? Like what are people looking like? Because everyone just thinks, you know, black women and hair, you know, it's a very kind of easy one. Like, yeah, they spend loads in hair, but
so the male grooming market is growing. We've seen things like, you know, in the States, we've seen basketball like LeBron James investing in male grooming. We've seen The Rock investing in male grooming. It's a fast growing market and it's going to you know, quadruple by 2030. We're seeing a rise in men, you know, going into hair transplants. So a lot of men are doing hair transplants these days, going to Turkey, or staying in London and doing hair transplants just to make themselves feel good. We're seeing men doing beard transplants now, and this is something that's going to be a lot more common. So the male grooming market is fast growing. And one thing people need to remember as well when it comes to beard surgeon is we're in the male grooming market, but we're also in the perfumery market because our products are scented. We have fragrance oils in our products, and perfumes is another thing that we want to attack and go down. So yeah, it's those two markets combined together are huge, and it's fast growing.
Yeah, I suppose it's one of those things that's like, you know, you guys. Okay, so in terms of when Terry and Abby first came up with the idea, was it to address a problem, or was it just?
Yes. So the problem was, you know, when it comes to beard oils, a lot of companies they put, you know, harsh chemicals in their products and they don't have natural ingredients and the products don't smell nice. So for example, a lot of the time when we ask people what they use in their beard, some may say castor oil. Now castor oil is a great oil, but it's quite thick and sometimes it doesn't smell really well. Rarely it smells really nice. It smells nice. So having a product that is a lot lighter, a lot softer, but has different benefits for the beards rather than just one. And also gives that luxury feel and makes you feel good about grooming. A lot of the time, men don't like putting things in their beard because they don't like the products that they've been given in the past. And it's only until recently, the last couple of years, that we're seeing a lot of our businesses focus on the beard and male grooming and actually putting the effort into creating a product that will make men feel happy about using it.
Yeah, that makes sense. So we talked a little bit about what next. So you talked about, you know, being in the supermarkets and sort of being in spas and, you know, maybe barbers, etc. But what else are you guys sort of thinking about, and maybe going overseas as well, attacking the overseas market?
So looking at TikTok as well, exploring TikTok, going overseas definitely. I think for us now, the next stage is we bootstrap the business as far as we can take it. Now we need a vehicle, a person or a company to come on board, buy into our vision and support us in our journey in making beard surgeon one of the most, sought after brands, male companies in the world. So looking at the rest of Europe, potentially going into Italy, looking at the US, potentially going into Atlanta. Those sort of things those are the things that we want to focus on. We also have the UAE. They're really big on sex and oud. I'm sure there's something we can do there. So those are the different markets that we want to go into. But also in the UK, having more of a presence. At the moment, we only have 2 retail locations, both Westfields. We had 4 previously. We've closed 2 down, just so we can focus on other parts of the business. But then eventually we want to open them back up again and have more locations in the UK.
So the one in Watford you've closed down.
So Watford was a temporary one. We only had that for about 3 months whilst we were waiting to open our Westfield London branch. But then we had one in Manchester and we had one in Lakeside towards the back of last year. Yeah.
Okay, so that's quite a good reach, but at the same time, like you say, it's much harder to manage the logistics, isn't it, when you're sort of like in very varied locations. Did you notice a sort of different pattern around scents depending on where you were? Did you find like in Manchester they preferred something over in London or something like that?
Yeah, so in Manchester we found that Sweet Dream, which is also a popular scent, was the most popular scent for a while in Manchester. Also, the type of customer we had in Manchester was different. So, for example, in Stratford, a lot of our customers, Black and Asian, and a few white customers, but in Manchester, our customers were predominantly white and Asian.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, less Black customers in Manchester. And Lakeside as well, we had a lot of white customers, and then a few Asian and 2 Black customers. So depending on where you are, will determine the demographic or of your customer.
Yeah, the demographic, but also like you say, even like the scent, they're like, oh yeah, Sweet Dreams more than the bestseller. In London. So it varies, and I guess you can't predict that. That's just like trial and error. You kind of have to work that out. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, and in terms of like one piece of advice you'd give somebody starting a business today, what would be your piece of advice?
I would say one advice I'll give someone starting a business. I would say just remember that the version of yourself that you are today is not the version of yourself that's going to make this business successful. You're going to have to develop that, and don't be scared about that. Don't be scared of that, and don't be worried about that, and embrace the fact that you're going to have to break down everything you know about yourself and build it back again, but in a better way, with new skills, new experiences, and a different level of fearlessness. So that would be my advice to someone.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because you talk about developing yourselves and, your other founders, etc. All of you had to go on a journey, but also developing the business. So a lot of your advice has been around, not thinking about the business as it is today and thinking about the business as it will be. And, it's very difficult, like you say about, using Square instead of Shopify. If you guys had thought about it, you might have just thought, actually, it makes sense to have all of that. So we could, do you see what I mean? So there is a lot about thinking and, not being limited to what you believe you can do today, because there is a lot of sort of potential to grow and expand, with sort of a different mindset. Now, that's been really interesting. So I think if people were to take that away, the other thing I think is interesting is around working with others, because a lot of the founders that we meet, I mean, we've had one group of sisters, but a lot of the founders we meet are solopreneurs. And so I think what's been fun about this interview for me is like, actually there's 3 of you with very different personalities and how that's formed the brand and sort of.
And I think just also having the genuine love for each other and wanting the best for each other. That's one thing that I can say we have as a trio. If we see someone is going through some hard times, we make things easier for them. We're there for them, and just understanding that, like I said earlier, everything that every criticism that someone might get or praise is coming from a good place, and we've achieved so much in such a short period of time. We just know that we have a lot more to learn. We have a lot more many more skills to develop, and having regular heart-to-hearts with business owners is important. And you're not always going to be at the same level. Sometimes I may be really motivated and my business partners may not be, or they might be really motivated and I might not be. And as long as you have someone that's always going to be, holding down the team, then, you continue to grow.
And have you guys ever thought about sort of like what an exit would look like?
So previously we hadn't really had, much of a inkling. I think we've always had ideas in our mind, but we didn't actually have a plan as what is the exit strategy, what's the exit plan. That is something that I have now started to lead in terms of us putting together. So we currently have workshops every couple of weeks going through what that exit plan looks like, whether it's going to be a case of us relinquishing our shares and still being a part of the business, or relinquishing our shares and having someone come in and manage the business, and maybe we're just on the background receiving dividends, or just relinquishing all our shares and moving on to another project. That's something we actually have to sit down and discuss, because what I might want might be different from what the other two might want. So we have to make sure that we're on the same page and we're working towards a common goal. So yeah, that's something we're actively working on as well. I think it's been really hard for us to work on the business because for the last 2 years, we've been working in the business. So we've been running the business, but also working as sales associates for the business, generating sales. It's only this year we've decided, you know what, enough is enough. We need to take a step back. The business won't grow unless we come out of it and allow it to stand on its own, but also build it from the outside.
And you mentioned like at the beginning, your mum, fiance, siblings working in the business, etc. How are you managing the balance between sort of like having a business, because a business is like a baby at the end of the day, you know what I mean? Yours is like a toddler stage now. It's starting to get to that toddler stage, etc. How do you manage that and have like a personal life?
Oh.
Should I be asking your fiance that?
Yeah, you should be asking her that. Really, it's really hard. I think before, I didn't really have much of a social life. I still don't really at the moment. I think how I manage is I like to go on holidays. So when I go on holidays, that's where I feel like I'm free. I'm re-energized. I get motivated for, what's to come in the future. I think especially when you're working on the shop floor 5 days, 6 days, sometimes a week, there's no time for friends, barely. And that's why I said, even as a trio, we barely even met up, because we have different locations that we have to manage. It's only now, as we're drawing away from being on the shop floor, that I'm able to, meet up with friends, go to the gym. But it's something that, it's really hard to manage. And as a founder, you have to remember that if you don't take care of yourself mentally, physically, then your business is going to suffer in the long run. And that I had to find out the hard way, because your body sometimes it can begin to give up on you, especially if you're working too hard.
I think the difficulty is like it's the awareness, knowing when that's happened, and it's quite difficult, isn't it, when you're in it? You sort of like, it's only when you take a break, you go on holiday, and then on day 3 you're like, feel really drained and tired. It's like, because you've been working 8 months straight and you haven't had a proper break. So I think having 2 other business owners helps, because then they might say to you, look, Oje, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You need a holiday.
Definitely.
So you've got each other's back, and like you say, things are coming from a place of love as opposed to coming from a place of criticism. It's kind of like, you need to take a break, dude. You're just, you know what I mean? You're burnt out. No, that's really useful. Well, thank you. So where can people find you, both physically and online?
Yeah, so you can find us in Westfield, Stratford. We're basically on the ground floor, which is the middle floor, outside NA, food shop, and also outside Browns, not far from Foot Asylum. And then in Westfield, London, you can find us on the first floor, outside Foot Asylum. And online, you can find. Yeah, quite coincidental. Yeah. Foot Asylum is good for us. It helps. Yes. You can find us online on Instagram, Beard Surgeon Grooming. Also, you can find us on TikTok, Beard Surgeon Grooming.
All right, well, we'll follow your journey. And thank you so much for taking the time to speak to me today.